In today's tale, I go into how Kevin McCallister from Home Alone became John Kramer from the Saw series. So sit back and enjoy. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more stories, twists, and turns. The transition from the boy who defended the castle to the man who built the dungeon was not a sudden snap. It was a slow, agonizing erosion. It was the result of a brilliant mind realizing that the world did not operate on the principles of justice, but on the principles of leverage. Here is the comprehensive, deep-dive history of the death of Kevin McCallister and the birth of the Jigsaw Killer. Chapter 1. The Aftermath of Victory, 1993 to 1998. The world saw a heartwarming reunion at Rockefeller Center. They didn't see the weeks that followed. At 12 years old, Kevin McCallister was suffering from acute PTSD, though in the 1990s no one diagnosed it as such. He had night terrors. He checked the locks on the Winnetka house 17 times before bed. He began to hoard items: nails, fishing wire, broken glass, tar. His parents, Peter and Kate, were relieved he was safe, but they remained fundamentally negligent. They treated his trauma as Kevin acting out. When he flinched at the sound of the furnace kicking on, Buzz mocked him. When he tried to explain that Harry and Marv had wanted to kill him, really, truly end his life, his family smiled condescendingly. "But you got them, pal. You're a hero." The lesson. Kevin learned that survival is a solitary pursuit. Even surrounded by a large family, he was alone. If he wanted safety, he had to build it himself. He stopped setting traps for burglars and started building models. Complex, Rube Goldberg-esque machines. He became obsessed with cause and effect. If A pulls the string, B releases the weight, and C breaks the bone. It was the only time the chaotic world made sense. Chapter 2. The Disappearance, 1999 to 2003. By the time he turned 18, the McCallister family had fractured. The parents divorced, an inevitable decay caused by years of chaotic mismanagement. Kevin seized this opportunity. He didn't just move out, he erased himself. He looked at his birth certificate and saw a victim, a boy left behind. He needed a name that commanded respect, a name that sounded structural, foundational. He chose John, the most common name in the canon, a blank slate. He chose Kramer, harsh, Germanic, efficient. He moved to the East Coast, enrolling in a prestigious engineering program. His professors were disturbed by his intensity. While other students designed bridges to carry traffic, John designed structures meant to dictate flow. He wrote a thesis on the architecture of control, arguing that a building should guide the inhabitants' behavior, forcing them to acknowledge their environment. He was brilliant. He was also becoming devoid of empathy. He watched his peers drink themselves into stupors, waste their parents' money, and treat their bodies like garbage. "They don't appreciate what they have," he wrote in his journal, a leather-bound book that replaced his childhood battle plans. "They have never had to fight for a breath. They have never had a gun pointed at their head in a snowy backyard." Chapter 3. The Logic of the Talk Boy.
the voice. In his lonely apartment, John kept one relic from his past, the Tiger Electronics Talk Boy. As a child, he used it to simulate a party, to trick a hotel concierge, to manipulate reality. He realized early on that the disembodied voice carries more authority than the human face. When people see a face, they see weakness. When they hear a voice from a speaker, they hear God. He began tinkering with audio engineering. He would record his own voice, pitch shifting it down, slowing it to a gravelly drawl. He found that when he listened to these recordings, the scared little boy, Kevin, disappeared. The voice on the tape was timeless. It was the voice of judgment. He started leaving tapes for himself, reminders to eat, reminders to study. Eventually, they became manifestos. Chapter 4, The Love and the Loss, 2004 to 2006. John tried to rejoin the human race. He met Jill Tuck. Jill was the anti-Kate McCallister. She didn't ignore problems. She stared them in the face. She ran a clinic for the broken, the addicted, the desperate. John fell in love with her because she was trying to fix people, just as he was trying to fix structures. But their methods were incompatible. Jill believed in mercy. John believed in consequence. You coddle them, Jill, watching a junkie named Cecil leave the clinic only to score again. You give them a warm bed so they feel comfortable killing themselves slowly. If you want them to survive, you have to make them fight for it. Then came the pregnancy. Gideon.
For the first time since 1990, John felt hope. He was building a crib, not a trap, a sanctuary. He was going to be the father Peter McCallister never was. He was going to be present. The door slam changed everything. Cecil, robbing the clinic, slammed the door into Jill's stomach. John held Jill as she bled. He felt the life of his unborn son fade away. And in that hospital waiting room, the ghost of Kevin McCallister returned. He remembered the wet bandits. He remembered that bad people don't stop because you ask them nicely. They stop when they are physically unable to continue. The realization? The world is full of wet bandits, and I have stopped setting traps. Chapter 5. The Cancer and the Cliff. The diagnosis of colon cancer and the frontal lobe tumor was the final tumblers of the lock clicking into place. The universe was playing a joke. He who appreciated the sanctity of life more than anyone was being evicted from his own body. Meanwhile, Cecil walked free. Buzz, now a corrupt detective planting evidence, walked free. John drove his car off the cliff not to die, but to ask the question, do I want to live? When he pulled the steel rod from his abdomen, staring at his own visceral anatomy, he had his answer. The pain was clarifying. The endorphins flooded his brain, washing away the depression, washing away the fear. He realized his childhood traps were flawed. The heated doorknob, the paint cans, the micro machines, they were designed to annoy, to delay. They were child's play. If you want to save a soul, you don't hit it with a paint can. You force it to shed the weight that is dragging it down. You force it to sacrifice. Chapter 6. The Prototype, the First Game. He tracked down Cecil. He didn't wear a mask yet. He wanted Cecil to see him, but he needed a proxy for his childhood fear. He remembered the furnace in the basement of the Chicago house, the way the grate looked like teeth, the way it roared. He built the knife chair. It was a mechanical jar. I want to play a game, John said. For the first time, he used the phrase that had been percolating in his subconscious. It was a dark reflection of his childhood. Home Alone was a game to Kevin. Saw was a game to John. When Cecil failed, collapsing into the razor wire, John didn't feel joy. He felt the somber satisfaction of an engineer watching a stress test fail. The subject was structurally unsound. Chapter 7. The synthesis of Kevin and Jigsaw. As the Jigsaw killer grew, the methodology was entirely lifted from the psyche of Kevin McCallister, warped by time and trauma. The Billy puppet. Kevin had used a cutout of Michael Jordan on a model train to simulate a person. He knew that a silhouette could control behavior. He built Billy the puppet to be the man of the house. The spiral cheeks represented the chaos of the world, contained within a pale, rigid face. The pig mask. On Christmas Eve 1990, Kevin had walked past a nativity scene. He had hidden in a manger. Now he inverted that imagery. The pig mask was the Year of the Pig, a tribute to the Chinese New Year festival he once read about? No, it was simpler. It was filth. It was the gluttony of the wet bandits, the greed of his family. He wore the face of the animal that wallows in the mud to capture those who wallowed in their own moral filth. The house. In Saw 2, John uses a house filled with traps, a house that fills with poison gas. This was the ultimate recreation of his childhood trauma. He put 8 people in a house like his family and watched them turn on each other. He proved that without his protection, his rules, the family unit disintegrates into violence. The glass in the feet. In the climax of Home Alone, Kevin makes Marv walk barefoot on Christmas ornaments. In Saw, walking on broken glass became a recurring motif. It was the ultimate test of commitment. How much pain will you endure to get where you need to go? Chapter 8. The Legacy. John Kramer lay on his deathbed in the makeshift hospital room of the meatpacking plant. The air was cold, reminding him of that Chicago winter. He looked at Amanda Young, his apprentice. He saw in her the same frantic energy he had as a child, the desire to survive, but the lack of discipline. She was making traps that were inescapable. She was becoming a murderer, not a teacher. She was becoming a wet bandit. He thought of his mother, Kate. "Kevin, you're such a disease." He thought of Harry Lime. "I'm gonna bite every little finger off." John smiled. He had bitten back. He had taken the fear of a confused 8-year-old boy and forged it into a philosophy that had gripped the city in terror. He had proven that the only way to make people grateful for the warmth is to make them freeze. The only way to make them grateful for the light is to lock them in the dark. He closed his eyes. The furnace in the basement finally stopped roaring. The old man Marley waved goodbye. The snow fell softly on the McCallister house. Game over, Kevin thought. And John Kramer died.
Well, that was a twist. Leave a comment with your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Until next time.